Hey, everybody, this is John Karna from Scream and Valley of the Boom, and you're listening to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You're my boy, Blue!
Yo, Adrian!
A podcast with interviews of amazing guests from the world of pop culture.
Oh, yeah!
TV.
Nice!
Movies.
Oh, I love the movies!
Comedy and more. From deep inside the Man Cave, your host, Elias.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles. This week, I had the pleasure talking to John Karna. He recently starred in Valley of the Boom, which premiered on Nat Geo. The series centers around the 1990s tech boom in Silicon Valley. And he stars with Bradley Whitford, Steve Zahn, Lamorne Morris. You also remember him from MTV's Scream as Noah Foster. We talk about Valley of the Boom, Scream, his acting career, and a few more other fun things about him. Make sure you check out our podcast at our website, www.themccpodcast.com, where you can find all of our latest news and archive episodes, as well as links to our social media and email. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. It was fun talking to John. John, welcome to the cave.
Hey, thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, how are you, man? What's new with you?
I'm doing well, dude. It's it's pilot season here in LA, so me and all my actor friends are just auditioning a ton for a bunch of comedy and TV pilots and everything like that. It's a crazy time.
So the listeners know you from Scream. I was a fan of that. I watched that on MTV, and now you're on Valley of the Boom, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that also. But first, tell the listeners where you're originally from.
Well, I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I grew up there, and I did a ton of musical theater back in the day when I was around like 7th grade. I started doing a bunch of theater, and I actually went to college in Oklahoma. I went to OU to major in musical theater, but in between those 2 years, I got my first film gig, and it was like, man, movies are so dope, and I decided to quit school and move to LA.
There you go.
Cool.
So while you're in Texas, how was it growing up in Texas?
It was cool, man. I mean, Houston is it's like highways as far as the eye can see. I mean, it was a pretty suburban existence. The kids we'd all hang out at in the parking lot of the Whataburger all the time. That was like the cool place to hang, which was dope, I went to the same high school as Andrew Luck, which I was pretty stoked about. Yeah, it's cool seeing him killing it. He was very talented back in the day as well, so that was pretty cool. Yeah. I think I must have held the door open for him for like 3 times or something. It was pretty exciting.
Was he older than you or younger than you?
Yeah, he was a senior when I was a freshman,
okay.
And nicest guy, that dude. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Now, was he? I assume he was popular in high school playing football. Like, how good was he in high school?
Oh, he was great. But the crazy thing about that dude that we all just laugh about is how smart he is, too. I think he went to Stanford and, majored. He was like an engineer and had a 4.0 and was just like, he's a machine, that guy.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. But it was in my high school, it was awesome. We had football was the big thing. And then also the musical theater kids were weirdly very cool in our school. At least that's what I tell all of the people I go on dates with. And it was a fun existence. Yeah. It was cool.
And I don't know if the listeners know this, but high school football is pretty huge in Texas, especially on Friday nights.
It's crazy. Yes, yeah, Friday Night Lights, dude. I mean, it really was a pretty huge thing. I mean, even being in the city, it's, everybody shows up, everybody from the neighborhood, and, even if you never really went to that school, you would still go see your games. It was cool. And we had some big rivalries and everything, and, you always had a crush on a girl that you would go to the game with, and, it was very wholesome, I would say. Yeah. Not like LA. It's a little different.
Were you there? Were you there every Friday night during the games?
I wished I was cooler and saw more of the games. I was like a big video game player growing up.
Yeah.
Me and my friends would just play Super Smash Brothers all the time on Friday nights instead, but like the homecoming game is always a big one. There's always a few that you definitely had to go to.
Actually, my next question for you was actually what were you into as a kid growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a ton of theater I was really excited about. I really loved movies growing up. I was really kind of like I was like such a big video game kid, and I kind of just was like really into my TV. That's what happens in Houston too. I mean, during the summer when you would be out playing, it's so incredibly hot and humid and awful outside that most of the time kids just would go to each other's homes and just enjoy the AC, So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of that. I learned to juggle in high school, so I was really into juggling at one point.
How did that
I
go
was
with the
like,
girls?
Great. So many girlfriends. I'm just joking. No, really, I actually, during PE, which I was like one of the weirdos who took PE, I asked my PE teacher if it was cool for me to juggle instead of doing like the team sports that they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And this one kid who was so talented at soccer, but I think got kicked off the soccer team because of aggression or something. He saw me juggling on the sidelines of the soccer game that was going on, and he looked me straight in the eyes. And it was really impressive, but he just kicked the ball straight at my face. And it was really, I mean, you had to give it to his aim, honestly. It was very cool. I hope he's doing well. Somewhere over there.
You mentioned video games. What were some of your favorite video games?
Oh, I mean, growing up, like my sister got a Nintendo 64 when I was really young, so I was doing like all that cool stuff. Legend of Zelda, the Super Mario Brothers. I was really into Super Smash Brothers at one point. I guess that's still going on. It's incredible. God, I mean, a ton really. But it was really just a way to chill with the homies,
Yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the movies that you fell in love with at that age, and TV shows?
Dude, yeah, that's a good question, man. I mean, my friends and I were obsessed with like Hot Rod. Have you ever seen Hot Rod?
Yes,
with Andy
yes.
Samberg.
Yeah.
That movie, I straight up still think it's the most brilliant movie ever made, but we would watch that like over and over again. Borat was coming out around the time I was in high school, so we all snuck in to see Borat, which was really dope. My friend, I had a buddy who was super into movies, and him and I would spend weekends sometimes where we would go buy a ticket for a movie at like 10 a.m. and then try to like stick around in the movie theaters and just hop from one theater to another until like 11 p.m. We ended up seeing like 8 movies a day. It was a crazy time. I saw a lot of bad movies that way, which was very cool.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all seen bad movies.
Oh, they're the best. Honestly, bad movies are incredible. You know what is the most incredible good bad movie that has come out recently is Bird Box.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen Bird Box.
I have not watched it yet because everybody's like, there's like mixed reviews. Some people are like, oh my God, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You gotta watch it. And other people are like, no, don't waste your time.
Honestly, you should just have, just get a 6-pack with some buddies and just Bird Box it out. It is crazy, and it's like not necessarily great, but it's so good, it's messed up. It's really, yeah. But anything like that, I'm into,
Yeah.
I became like really obsessed with horror movies when I first got on Scream, and then I just took a deep dive into some crazy horror. So that's become like a pretty big love of mine too.
Yeah. So tell us about Scream then. How did you land that gig?
Dude, it was just a really cool audition that it was honestly, it came out of the blue. And when I actually went in for it, there were all these other auditions happening around that day. And, I went in, did it, and felt like I was like, I don't know. And I didn't hear anything back for about 2-3 months. And it was kind of this crazy thing where I got a phone call at the end of the summer, just being like, hey, by the way, they're still looking for that part. And they really want to test you. Which means like a screen test going in to see, all the producers and everything for this final audition. And they were like, all right, so stand by for that. We'll see what happens. And then the next day they called and they were like, okay, so they're still testing you, but you don't even have to audition for them. They're just going to play the tape from months ago for these people and see if that works out. But I was like, okay, great. I definitely didn't get the part then. There's no way that's going to happen. And then they called me a week later and they were like, hey man, you're in Scream, which was honestly absolute madness.
Now, did you know the audition was for Scream, or they didn't mention that part?
You did kind of know it was Scream. I think at the time they had like a different name for it, but you kind of could feel it. I mean, I had this whole monologue. I remember it was very like breaking the fourth wall and like, talking about how you love horror so much and sometimes people can ruin it and, it just makes you so mad. It was a good time, man. And that was years ago by now. It's crazy.
Yeah. So you played Noah. Tell us a little bit about that character you played and how did you prepare for that?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I played Noah Foster. He was kind of the most fun because he always was kind of the meta part of the show. He's like always talking about the rules of horror. It was kind of the Jamie Kennedy of the TV show, and he's a nice guy. He just cared about his friends. He wanted to make sure no one died, and everyone died around him. All of his girlfriends died around him. It was a pretty sad time.
Yeah. Were you a fan of the movies?
Oh yeah. Actually, I remember the first Scream being like the first kind of crazy R-rated horror movie that I went over to my friend Eric's house and watched. And my parents. That was the funny thing is growing up, my parents were pretty strict about the movies I could watch, so I was always trying to sneak them, from other places. And I remember watching Scream 1 and 2 back to back, and it was like a revelation. I was like, how could movies be this crazy?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So, was that your first gig when you moved to LA?
No, well, when I moved to Los Angeles, I had had a couple guest starring parts on some shows. Like there was this ABC show that I had a few lines on, and there was a pilot that I shot with this really great improviser, Rob Hubel, that was going to be on IFC, and that got picked up and then, didn't go in the end. And, so there were a lot of false starts, but Scream was definitely the first thing that was it really paid my rent, thank God, because I was getting pretty close to, the end of my money by that point.
How long were you in LA before you got Scream?
It was crazy. It really wasn't that long. It was maybe a little over a year before the pilot happened. And then, you film the pilot and then you don't know if it's going to go. It was maybe 6 more months before we found out we were filming the show the next year. And it was pretty crazy. Yeah. But, my first gig ever was this, I don't even know why I bring it up, to be perfectly honest, but it's this movie called Premature. Which is about this kid who was reliving the same day over and over again, like Groundhog Day. Yeah. But it was like every time he prematurely came, he restarted the day over. And so that was like my first kind of entry into movies. Yeah. And I'm sure my mom was so proud to see me masturbating a ton on camera,
So so that's not bad that you were only in LA for that long, and you were on Scream for how many seasons? That was 3 seasons, I believe.
For 2 seasons.
2 seasons.
Yeah, it was 2 seasons. They actually filmed a 3rd season, I think, but with none of us in it. But I think Tyga was the lead of the 3rd season or something crazy like that. Yeah. But I don't know what ended up happening to that.
How did it feel being on a show like that on MTV?
Dude, it was cool, man. I mean, I have made, the friends that are closest to me now are all through that show, and, the cast really loved each other. I mean, that's what kind of happens when you go film. We filmed in Louisiana. We were in Baton Rouge the first season, and then New Orleans the second. And, when you're it's like summer camp. You're over there, and it's all you got is each other. And that was really fun. It also kind of felt like a reality show a little bit because, we wouldn't get the scripts until sometimes right before we shot, and sometimes there were some instances of people and actors being, they would pick up the script and be like, oh shit, I'm dying at the end of this. Like no one really told it. No one had time to tell them, so there was kind of this weird feeling of like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next week, Yeah. But it was cool, man. I mean, it was a pretty intense thing. I mean, MTV is a pretty crazy company to work for because there were just a lot of cooks in that kitchen at the time, Yeah.
Well, especially with the whole Teen Wolf and Jersey Shore was on, and
oh yeah, totally. I mean, we met the Teen Wolf guys at one point at this MTV thing, and those guys are hilarious, man. I mean, you could tell that they had been doing it for 6 years, and they were so in it, But it was a pretty crazy experience all around, I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, it's good for you, man. So, and now you're
Thanks,
on
dude.
Valley of the Boom on the National Geographic Channel. Tell us what the show's about, if the listeners don't already know.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy show. This it's kind of like a docu-series show hybrid where it's about like the birth of the internet in the mid 90s. You know, it's kind of like about the time before when we didn't have any idea what the hell the internet was, and then suddenly in just a few short years it's like everybody has this fever and they all move to the Silicon Valley to try to start a new tech company. And the show is kind of like three different stories. And in my story, I play Marc Andresse, who was the founder of Netscape, like the first internet browser that actually became a huge thing. And then, you know, there's two guys who play, you know, the founders of theglobe.com, which was like basically Facebook before Facebook ever became a thing. And those guys are really great, Dakota Shapiro and Oliver Cooper. And then the third story is like this guy, Michael Fain, Steve Zahn plays this guy who, it's a real story about this guy who created this company, Pixelon, which was all about streaming video. It was like basically YouTube. Yeah, but the company absolutely did not have the technology, and he was lying to everybody. And this guy was actually a fugitive from the law in West Virginia and had moved to California and changed his name and dyed his hair and created this tech company out of nothing. And then it all like implodes around him. It's crazy to see. But the show, so the show kind of goes in between all those stories, and it's a unique mix of, you know, we're all doing these scenes and then it'll cut to interviews with the real people actually involved, and they'll like kind of back up what you're seeing and be like, yeah, this really happened or this really didn't happen, you know. And it's a weird show. It's a lot of fun, man.
So how did you prepare for that role?
You know, it was crazy because before I got that show, I had never heard of Marc Andresse, and even though he's like so instrumental in, you know, everything we do now. And so I just did a ton of research on Marc. There's a lot of interesting books that are written about Netscape, and but Marc Andresse is kind of an enigma because he's really private and he doesn't like talking about the past at all. So a lot of my time was spent trying to get in touch with him, which I never ended up doing. But I made like a playlist of classical music that I knew he liked to listen to, and you know, at one point before the show, I drove up to Palo Alto and tried to there's like a computer history museum there that I tried to go see. And really, I just tried to like get as deep into, as deep as I could into the knowledge of all this tech, you know, and try to figure it out.
That's great.
But, yeah, it was cool. It was the first time I had ever played anybody who was like a real person. And it's a lot of pressure, really, because you don't want to do anybody justice. But it kind of helps in the show that Marc, as a real guy, even back then, he was like 6'2" and like, you know, over 200 pounds, and definitely not my body type because I'm definitely smaller than that. And so it in a way, it kind of gives me leeway to just kind of do a little interpretation of him instead of making it like a, you know, an exact caricature or something.
It's good people you worked with too. Steve Zahn and Lamorne Morris from New Girl. I mean, that was fun working with those guys.
Oh, it was amazing. I used to watch New Girl all the time in college, and it was so wild to be doing a show with him for a bit, man. I mean, yeah, that guy is brilliant. Steve Zahn is brilliant. The guy I got to do scenes with most of the time was Bradley Whitford, who is like one of my favorite actors. He's just always been so solid, and I actually loved The West Wing growing up. So it was all really kind of surreal, to be honest. You know, working with some really incredible actors, and I learned a ton. You know, it's just like an acting class the whole time. You know.
Do you have a favorite scene that you were in on the show?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a few. You know, it's cool because, you know, Marc was the only guy in the show who didn't do any actual interviews for the show. He gave his blessing for the show, but he was like, I don't want to be involved in any of this. Because he was like the only one who didn't do that. I got to kind of do him in the interview for a second, and there's this moment where, you know, you hear off screen that like he's like, "You're not Marc Andresse," and I'm like, "Oh right, yeah, I'm John, and sorry about that. You know, this is all crazy." And that monologue is, I think, one of my favorite things. I just think it's so weird, and it shows how crazy Matthew Carnahan is, who created the show. Yeah. He's just such a fucking crazy person, and I love it. I thought it was so dope.
So you've been acting for a few years now. Like who are some of your influences in the acting world? I know you mentioned Whitford. Who else? Do you have anybody else that you look up to?
Dude, Ethan Hawke, without a doubt, is one of my favorite actors ever. He's just been, I mean, growing up, that when we talk about movies that I was in love with as a kid, the Before Sunrise trilogy, like Before Sunrise and Sunset and Midnight, those three movies together are just honestly some of the most incredible filmmaking and acting that I've ever seen. I love it so much. Sam Rockwell is incredible. That guy, the way he dances and moves in every scene is incredible. Like, you know, any of these amazing guy actors who can just relax and sit in a scene, they're so amazing, you know. One guy that I'm like obsessed with right now, because I just started watching this HBO show, Vice Principals. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
It was Danny McBride. This guy, Walton Goggins, who plays alongside him, is so good. This dude. I mean, he's like my new favorite actor, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd say those are the dudes, you know.
Who do you wish that you want to work with someday?
Damn. Oh, that's a pretty meaty question, man. I mean, really anybody. I mean, I would love to work with anybody, but you know, man, I don't know. You know, it would be incredible to be able to do some scenes with like Timothée Chalamet or Lucas Hedges, you know, like these really amazing actors around my age who are just so connected and vulnerable. And, you know, that would be amazing. Really, I mean, honestly, God, if I could work with Al Pacino one of these days just before he retires would be insane. I hear that guy is crazy too, which I just love. I mean, Nick Cage, if I could work with Nick Cage, I would die happy. I would be done forever. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about Nicolas Cage, but I'm kind of on the side of him being like the best actor ever.
When I was growing up, I used to love watching his movies, you know, like what's the one with where they swap faces? What was that called there with John Travolta?
Oh, Face Off.
Yeah, Face Off was great. Or the one that he's a gun,
man.
Or the other one where he's a gun dealer with his brother. I forgot the name of it.
I can't remember.
I have that movie on Blu-ray too, and I can't remember the name of it. But it was like,
man.
But it's a really good movie. I mean, he has his moments.
He has his moments. I know. Look, I'm not saying that Nick Cage is, but you know what we got to say about Nick Cage, man, is that guy is trying to change the art form. You know, he is like, you got to respect any actor who's trying to switch it up. And this is a very crazy, you know, it's a crazy profession. So I do respect anybody who tries to bring in like German expressionism into his work, which he says he tries to do, which I totally believe.
And hey, he was almost Superman.
He was almost Superman. I know. That would have been amazing. Oh my God. There's this insane video of him, like that GQ did, where he basically walks everybody through his thought process on like all of his characters, you know, and he goes for like, you know, his amazing role in Moonstruck, he'll talk about in the same breath as like Con Air.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. I don't know. You got to check it out. It's so crazy.
So, how do you try to improve your acting skills every day?
Dude, that is a really good question, man. I read as much as I can. It's a crazy thing. It's like very important to watch as many movies as you can, but it's also really easy to feel like you're the laziest piece of shit ever when you're just sitting around watching movies. But I've been trying really hard in the past few years to just like really get a good film knowledge, because you pick up so much from the actors who came before you. It's incredible. Yeah. But you know, and honestly, there's class, man. Like I'm going to be going to class again, and it feels good to just, it's like a gym for actors. You know, you just go and pull out scenes and, you know, make a ton of mistakes and look really stupid. And it's amazing. Yeah. It's the best.
Well, so what kind of advice do you give to somebody that comes up to you and they tell you they want to get into the acting world?
Oh man, just, if you want to get into the acting world, you know, I would say read every play you can, watch every movie you can, and just, you know, go find a class. And if you're in school, go join the theater and, you know, just do it. It's the only way you get better is to just do it a ton and not let anybody tell you that it's not good. Because the more you act, the more you kind of hone your own expression and your own kind of instrument. And, you know, that is every good actor. When you watch every good actor on screen, it's just because they're bringing out these like really unique parts of themselves that no one else has.
Yeah.
And so if you focus on that and not about like getting famous, you will love it, you know, hopefully.
Would you tell somebody to do the exact same thing you did? Just pack your bags and go?
I mean, I was lucky because I had like found a manager, and you know there were a couple things that kind of positioned me to be confident about moving to LA.
Yeah.
So maybe not every single person should quit school. I mean, because that's the thing. I miss school a lot. The 2 years that I didn't have in the musical theater program there, I mean, that's a lot of valuable class that I just won't ever really get. And even now, after working, I definitely still miss being in a program. So if anybody's listening to this and they're in like an acting program, it is really amazing to stick it out because you learn so much. But sometimes, man, you just got to go for it. And
Exactly.
if you feel it, you just got to do it, you know?
So if you weren't an actor, what do you think you'd have been doing right now?
Dude, that's a crazy question because it's something I think every actor thinks about at one point, you know, when, you know, there's no auditions happening or you left one and you're like, wow, I'm the worst actor that's ever lived, which I'm starting to realize is a pretty universal feeling in every actor that no matter who you are, even if you're Meryl Streep, you have these moments where you're like, was any of that fucking good at all? Am I crazy here? But I don't know. Wait, remind me what you were asking again? What are you saying here?
Like, what would you, if you weren't an actor, what do you think you would have been doing?
Oh, right. Okay, I think about this. I think I would like to be a pilot.
Okay. Have you ever flown a plane before? Have you taken
I've never
lessons?
flown a plane before, but I just see like these pilots when you get off the plane, and they're always looking so cool, and they seem like, you know, you're going to all these different places. I don't know, so maybe that or something. I also thought it'd be cool to teach. You know, I thought teaching would be cool.
When you mentioned the pilots, they always have like that serious face when they get off the plane. They have the little luggage and they're just going. And they're not even like looking at anybody else.
I know, except for when they're kind of flirting with the stewardesses, which I witnessed recently, and I was like, damn, that pilot, he's doing it. I mean, that was a very pretty stewardess. I hope you guys fall in love, you know? It was really lovely.
So do you have like a dream role that you want to play someday?
Oh, man, I would love to play some kind of crazy guy, honestly, like some kind of, you know, this is, I guess I can say this now because the show's over, but for a brief moment in Scream, the showrunners, this was in the first season, the showrunners like took me out to dinner one night and they were like, hey, you know, John, you know, we've only got a few weeks left and we wanted to let you know that you are the killer. And, you know, in the next few episodes, it will be revealed that you will be the killer. And I remember being so stoked. I was, like, really excited to be able to do this crazy thing. And then, you know, show totally didn't know what they were doing, really, and then switched it up the next week. And so then that didn't really end up happening. But I would love that. I think it would be so fun to play some kind of insane guy. I actually did play like a rapist on Law and Order SVU, which was insane. So, you know, not really more rapists, but I'd like to play crazy people.
Yeah. Hey, some people are like that. Some people,
like
you know,
that.
like some people want to do that. Do you see yourself doing comedy?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would love to, man. I mean, really, it's anything that pays the rent. I just would love to do. But I really love being able to work on some kind of character that's way different from who I am. And that's why this Valley of the Boom thing has been so incredible, that they let me, you know, kind of transform into some weird dude. It was very cool. So anything that can push me out of my own self, I really love to gravitate to.
What do you think has been your favorite role that you've played so far in your career?
Dude, well, it's kind of a toss-up. I mean, Valley of the Boom, Marc, honestly, it was the coolest role to play ever because he's such an intelligent, he's so intelligent but also so closed off, and I really was fascinated with him, and I admire that guy so much. So I think that might be my favorite, but you know, my other favorite thing, honestly, it was a really small part, but I had this tiny part in that movie Lady Bird.
Okay.
And she in the movie, you know, Saoirse Ronan joins the school musical, and I played like the other guy in the musical with like her and Lucas Hedges, and you know, I got to sing musical theater for a second, and there's this moment where she like finds out, it's kind of a spoiler, but she finds out that like her first boyfriend, Lucas, is gay because she's like kissing someone in the stall. And I was that guy that they were kissing, that we were kissing in the stall, and that was actually crazy. I thought it was like such a cool little thing to do, and I admire Greta Gerwig so much, man. She's just an incredible filmmaker. So that was pretty cool. I think that might be my close second. Close second to my favorite.
So now you've done interviews and magazines and podcasts, stuff like that. What's something you wish you got asked that nobody ever asked you at an interview?
Oh man, now that is a really good question as well. Damn, you're right. You do get kind of asked like the same things over and over again. You know, I guess it'd be nice to be asked. You know, geez, I don't know. I mean, I feel like everybody kind of covers the bases pretty well. You know, I don't know. What's like the craziest question you've ever asked? A question that just like threw them way off left field.
I don't know. So one of the other questions I usually ask is like, what is a fun fact about you that you want the listeners to know, or like what are some of your hobbies that you like to do outside of acting?
Right. Yeah, which is that's a hard question for me to answer because it's like, you know, basically like watch movies. I play the ukulele. That's awesome. You know, I'm a big fan of the ukulele. That happened because I had a bunch of crushes on girls, and that's how it always starts. You're like, I need to play you a tune. You know, you would think, man, but it's not necessarily the sexiest instrument in the world to play. But I love it, you know. So I do that in my spare time. I hike a ton. I really have like fallen in love with, you know, any kind of nature. I when we were in Vancouver filming Valley of the Boom, that's when I got to just like really get into some of the most incredible wilderness I'd ever seen. So since then, I've just been hiking any chance I get. And when things get too weird in this city, I always just have to get out of here, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. You just, you know, you leave and clear your head out.
Yeah, totally. Also, it's like, you know, I think I read somewhere Benedict Cumberbatch saying that when I was younger, and there was like a real brief moment. I still love that actor, but there was a brief moment where I was like, Benedict Cumberbatch is the greatest actor I've ever seen ever, and like it'll never get better than that. I was a true Cumberbitch in that moment, you know, and I still love him very much. But yeah, he said that he liked to hike, so that's where I got that from.
Is there any other upcoming projects that you want to share with the listeners that you got?
You know, I just stay tuned. You know, I don't really have anything set right now, but there's a few things kind of in the works, and we're hoping that something will come through soon. You know, Valley of the Boom, it's all out now, and I honestly I think it's a lot better just binging, you know, it in like two tries or something. You know, it goes really well together. So, you know, I hope everybody enjoys the show. You know.
Right. And lastly, how can the listeners find you on social media?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have an Instagram. It's a little embarrassing. I really need to change this, but my profile picture is like me still in high school. I don't know why that's the case. So please don't judge me if you go, but it's, my Instagram handle is Johnny_Karn, Karn, which is also, I gotta fix that. But anyway, yeah, that's my handle, Johnny_Karn. And then I think on Twitter, I'm on, at Johnny_K. So, all right. Yeah, there we go.
Is there anything else you want to tell the listeners before we end this?
I don't know. You know, I hope everyone's doing well. You know, I hope everyone's chilling in the cave. I don't know. How you doing, man? I mean,
doing good,
you
man.
Enjoying doing this show? That's cool. What kind of music do you like to listen to?
You know, I grew up in the 80s, so I just listened to 80s music, but
Dude, 80s music is amazing.
But now I'm more into just, you know, listening to podcasts, listening to sports on the radio, you know, like.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a dad, so it's hard to be listening to a lot of music, you know?
Right. Well, I you know, I've actually been having this thought, actually. How old are your kids, if you mind me asking?
My daughter will be 4 in April, and my son is 15 months old.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's beautiful. So they haven't yet started listening to like the pop of today.
No.
I realized like at some point when I'm a dad, I'm gonna have to be like listening to like Ariana Grande over and over again. You know. Yeah. So I was wondering if you were getting into that yet.
Yeah. Get used to it. For a whole year in my house, it was just Trolls over and over and over.
That's amazing. Yeah, my sister just had her first baby, actually, and it's like the first baby in the family. So we're all like, obsessed with babies now. We can't stop talking about it. It was pretty amazing.
In due time. Take your time.
Yeah, please. I mean, not for me personally. Oh, geez, I have much to do.
All right, John. This was fun. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for having me, man.
Let me tell you all a story about a mighty company. Rule the world of software up until 93. Then Bill Gates wanted Netscape dead, so we called a fateful meeting. This is what he said.
Hey yo, before you keep on lying, let me make a point that up until this moment Netscape ran a joint. The idea of the net flew over Bill Gates' head. Andreessen, Clark, and Barksdale had the browser making bread. Netscape shows up with their brand of perspicacity, blended oh so sweetly with unusual tenacity, while Gates and his crew show a paucity of gravity and the greed near depravity.
Right or wrong, cause it doesn't really matter. When Gates bring out the hammer, yo, your kneecaps will shatter.
Be it as it may, this whole thing is a bust, cause what Bill Gates did is called antitrust.